Welcome everyone. Today there's a request to talk a little bit about the topic of spiritual materialism. There has been a book by Tobi on this topic, and a recent talk that was given by Venerable Tanisaru Bhikkhu on the same topic. And one of the students in Hong Kong has requested to explore that a little bit. So we can see everything in life and in our practice, in ourselves, from different angles, different perspectives. You can look at it from this way, from that way. You can look at it from a higher perspective, a lower perspective. And in fact, really, we can't help but looking at things from our own perspective, from the way our mind has been conditioned so far. It depends where you've been brought up, what you've learned, what you've heard. That's the way you will look at things. Depending on the topics that are relevant for you, that currently dominate your mind and life, you will look at things in that particular way. The way I look at the topic of spiritual materialism is therefore not really limited to a certain angle or certain viewpoint. You might look at the topic when you're talking to a student in a certain way, dependent on the student's need in that moment. But to make things fixed, like, for example, spiritual materialism is a bad idea, or it's a good idea, I don't really know. I don't agree on these kind of fixed standpoints. Some ideas that might appear bad at some times for some people might appear good to some people at some times and actually help them, while harming other people again. So it's really, really complicated. You might have a student that cultivates a type of spiritual materialism where he's chasing attainments. And he's so overwhelmed by that desire to get attainments that that very desire blocks his progress on the path. And in such a circumstance, the teaching on spiritual materialism, in terms of not treating the spiritual path as you would treat material objects that you're amassing and storing and putting into your shelf and showing to your friends and making it a possession that somehow ups your value. Instead of doing it like that, that teaching might actually break through or cut through that kind of particular defilement in that particular student at that particular moment. Telling them, hey, look, spiritual path is not necessarily always about amassing things, amassing attainments, amassing sort of possessions that you then can show off to yourself or your friends, feeling kind of, I'm a someone that's pretty amazing because I have all those amazing spiritual attainments. Maybe then the teaching is adequate, to cut through that, right? And at other times, you might have people who are basing their entire spiritual practice on the idea that you only need to release and let go all the time. You don't need to actually accumulate anything. Any kind of accumulation they would consider to be sort of bad. While that might be true again for some people at some times, it is not always an ultimate truth that accumulating certain mental states or certain positive actions, merit on the path, is necessarily a bad thing. For some characters, it might be very good advice to cultivate the idea of, your actions really matter. What you do, what you think really matters. And before you let go, maybe it might be a good idea to let go like a wealthy person. As Thanissaro Bhikkhu always mentions, this kind of letting go like a wealthy person, rather than letting go like a pauper, like somebody that's poor, that doesn't have anything. So first we are building ourselves up. We are creating virtues, qualities in the mind, which are not only of benefit to ourselves and our spiritual path and our attainments and so forth, but they're also of benefit to the world at large. They're not just only attainments for yourself. Whatever qualities you're having in your mind, they are good for the world. If you're already thinking like that, and if you have a balanced view, I would say, like you're able to explore different topics, different viewpoints at different times in a balanced way, then I would say that's a relatively useful and functional approach to the training, to the path. However, if you're rigid and stuck, and if you say, well, this kind of teaching is a bad teaching, just in general it's a bad teaching, and the other type of teachings are a good teaching, I don't know, It's not that certain very often. It very much depends. I've received teachings that might be considered by some of my other teachers, might be considered to be very unorthodox. And yet those were the teachings that really helped me to move forward, to relax, to let go of these rigid kind of mental patterns that I've accumulated through cultural conditioning, for example, throughout several years of my training, becoming very, very rigid in my approach. It is this way or no way. This is the way the Buddha has taught, and it must be like that. And I didn't even notice how that stiffened my mind, and how I started to accumulate dust in my mind, just like books in a shelf, because I was so rigid. So then if a teacher comes along and tells you, just relax, have some fun, it seems like just really the wrong thing, right? No, Buddhists don't have fun. And if they have fun, it must be skillful fun. And if they have fun, it must be wholesome fun. And so you're kind of becoming a person that's, after a while, unable to actually enjoy themselves because of all the stiff and rigid assumptions and the views and the opinions and the cultural stuff that we accumulate when we're engaging this training from that perspective. So then you might need a teacher that actually loosens you up a little bit. Or a teaching at that moment that loosens you up a little bit. That turns you a little bit into a rebel. So you start to ask your own questions. You're not just following that stiff system in that rigid manner, totally neglecting what you actually need in this moment. But you think, okay, it is written in this book that it's supposed to be like that, and that teacher has said that it must be like that, so therefore I must now press myself into that pattern to actually... And you see, most people, they don't do it for the sake of attaining, they do it for the sake of fitting in. They want to belong to that group. They want to be able to see themselves as, I am actually a good Buddhist. I am actually a good boy. Right, Dad? Right, Mom? Kind of like that. We're doing it for our imaginary parents in our mind, which might be scolding us if we're not good, which might be punishing us. You know, we might be doing it for our teachers. Oh, because that is a very venerable teacher. He's very revered and respected everywhere in the world, so whatever he says must be exactly what I must do right now. I'm not too sure about that. From my experience, I would advise to pay very careful attention to your needs and to who you are right now, and to actually ask good questions to yourself. Why are you on this path really? And it comes back to that topic, what are you seeking really? Why do you sit down? And what do you require right now? Not what do you feel like? What do you feel like? I feel like I would like to have some fun. That might not be the best thing right now. I feel like I just need to sit down and do this kind of hardcore practice every day. Why, though? And so rather than putting a system before another and saying, yes, well, that system is bad, that system is good, you can explore it from different angles. There's no rush. Take your time and have a good look at yourself and understand yourself. Engage rather than in quality than in quantity. Trying to accumulate a lot of practice, trying to accumulate a lot of teachings, trying to accumulate a lot of this and a lot of that. This kind of idea of approaching the path from the materialistic perspective of hoarding quantities of things might be good for some people and sometimes again, and it might be detrimental to your practice. Question is, are you doing it like that? I'm appealing to your honesty with yourself. Like, what kind of person are you? Are you a spiritual materialist? And is the way you are doing it actually harming you? Or is it benefiting you? How can you tell? If you say it's benefiting you, well, of course you would say that because you are doing that, so we like to defend the things we do and believe in. But actually look in terms of cause and result. Is what you're doing, where does it get you? Who are you becoming through that? And is what you are becoming actually a progress on the path, or are you deluding yourself in some way? And of course, asking yourself these kind of questions, you might fall into a lot of doubts. Oh, my goodness, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And that's why it's so important to have a teacher who can bounce ideas with you together and help you on the path and question you. That's why it's so important to have a community around you of people who are able to not let you, who are not letting you sink into the whole of your delusions, but they actually challenge you a little bit. And they help you to really progress and not steer off path, walking the path blindly, trying this or trying that. So one perspective would be, on spiritual materialism, one perspective would be to say that the accumulation of spiritual qualities is missing the point. What you really want is letting go. All right? You might see it like that. Maybe addressing an audience that are really intent on becoming a spiritual somebody. I'm that spiritual person, and we're doing it secretly because we feel we have no value, and so we think that if I am that spiritual somebody, then finally I'll be somehow rewarded by my group, and I'll be integrated in the group, and then I'll be accepted, and then I'll be loved if I'm that spiritual somebody. Now, is that bad? I don't know. I don't think so. We all do that anyways all the time. And that might be a good way of accumulating certain possessions, no? So you can see it from this perspective too. You can see, yes, we are all trying to be a somebody in some way. Why not become a somebody that actually cultivates spiritual values? That might be something that is very useful for the world, and is very useful for the communities that you are a part of, and it's useful to yourself. So it seems to be that cultivation that is actually going into a good direction. You're accumulating virtues such as patience, generosity, virtue, kindness. These are spiritual possessions. And just like you might have possessions in your house, material possessions like books, like a car, like jewelry, etc., you may have spiritual possessions. There's nothing wrong with having spiritual possessions. That's the other view. Do they cancel each other out? Again, I don't think so. I think they're complementary. It's just knowing what is it that becomes a trap for you, right? Because both can become a trap for you. You can be trapped by that kind of just staying on the level of accumulating spiritual qualities, like being a good boy, being a good girl, you know, and you get trapped there. It doesn't get any further. You're not really getting any deeper into the stages where you fully let go, like proper meditation, deep inside, because you're constantly stuck on the level of the material form, the level of coarse action. It might even not become a refined action in your case, because we're so obsessed with action that we cannot somehow make a way beyond actions. Then the path becomes a trap because you get stuck on the level of action, and only on the level of action. And now you could say, yes, that is very true, but there's different levels of action. There's coarse action, there's refined action, there's highly subtle actions. And there is the subtlest of actions, which then lead to jumping over to nirvana, to enlightenment. And gradually refining your meditative skills is all a matter of actions. And yes, you're right if you say that. That's correct. That is correct. However, in my experience, in meditation, it's a matter of words, I know right now. It's a matter of descriptions and words. It is not actually the case that you abandon action in meditation. You never really abandon action in meditation. You're continuously acting in the meditation practice on very subtle ways. But it is very good sometimes to give the advice to someone to stop doing so much. In fact, stop doing altogether. Just look. Ask yourself what is going on. If you give such a person the advice, no, you're continuously acting, and you must act skillfully at all times so that you can progress, it might confuse the heck out of that person, and so they're constantly stuck in a level of coarse action. They cannot refine their actions because they do not really know what they're doing. In order to continuously refine your actions, you have to be so attentive. Your attention has to be so refined, as coming down to the moment right now, and what it is actually. How do you guide your, for For example, what does your intentionality do on the level of intent? What's going on? How could you discern that? And how does it create further actions? That is very, very subtle. Now we're going into the realm of very subtle kind of actions, or the root of actions. Yeah, that might quickly become overwhelming, and then you're stuck with all these actions, and you can't relax. Because you're so focused on just trying to do it well and to do it good all the time, it's impossible to just let go a bit and enjoy what you're doing, rather than focusing too much on the doing. Yeah, for such a person who is now, that spiritual materialism has turned into an unhealthy obsession. They're so stuck in the trap of, I must do good, I must do good, I must do good. For them, the advice to stop it. Just enjoy yourself. Have a nice evening out. Go play with your friends. Relax a bit, Might be just good advice. Or let go of attaining. Let go of trying to attain. Stop it. I said, just sit here, to do nothing. Just observe. Let your thoughts come, let your thoughts go. There is a time for that. There is a time for that for some people. You just want to let go. Drop it. Rather than trying to constantly have only good thoughts and abandon all the bad thoughts, sometimes it's just step back and relax. Stop interfering. Stop messing around. So that might be then seen as, oh, now I'm not accumulating spiritual qualities right now. Yes, you are. Did you notice just how relaxed you were when you were meditating? And did you not enjoy it? Did you sit and let everything be for a while, not trying all the time? Not focusing, not biting yourself into something, not applying your will to the object. Well, wasn't that nice? Oh yeah, it was nice, but I can't really do it because it's delusion, isn't it? I'm deluding myself, am I not? Wow, it's a thin line, you see. It's so complicated, it's so complex. It depends on who you're talking with. It depends where the advice goes. It depends on the moment, the mood. It depends on so many things. So that's exactly the reason why I cannot give you a clear-cut answer to, well, spiritual materialism is bad, or, well, spiritual materialism is good. These things are not so clear-cut to me. I just can't go and say yes to the one and no to the other. It depends very much. And so the art of being able to guide yourself appropriately in the moment, it's something that grows over years and years and years of experience, just observation, getting to know yourself, learning from your mistakes. If you want to ascend, if your goal is to become enlightened, if your goal is to release suffering, to get out of the cycle of suffering, fantastic. If you keep that goal in mind, you will gradually adjust your actions. No stress. You will gradually start to move towards it more and more and more. It's almost as if it would pull you if you just let it. If it becomes too much about, this kind of chasing, trying, check your motives, your real motives. It's almost certain you're doing it somehow to please your inner parents or your teacher, which is a replacement of your inner parents, or it's not serving that way, not really. A lot of people, they practice Buddhism or something like this even out of fear, out of fear. Like they have fear not to fall into they have fear to fall into hell realms, or they have a fear that they're continuously messing up, and so their whole mind is is twisted by that fear, and so their practice cannot progress, and what they're cultivating really is more and more fear as they go along. I've had that for quite a while, and I had to abandon that because I noticed it was just getting out of hand and was getting worse and worse. Is a fear that my negative actions, my subtle negative actions, and the negative karma that I've made in my past will gradually come to fruition, and when I die, and I could not purify all of that, and I could not have become a better person, and I would die and I would have that one negative thought, and it would downward spiral, and it would turn into a really bad experience after my death, and then I would get reborn in the hell realms. And what are the chances of getting out there? Really, really, really slim. It's really difficult to do anything good in those realms because it's just pure pain. So that was my idea for a long time. And so it created this tension in my practice that did not allow me to enjoy it. And if I cannot enjoy my practice, seriously, that is not good. Hasn't been good for me. Has not been good for me at all. And so at some point we need to overcome this. You have to let go of the hell in your mind, so you're not steering yourself there again and again. So it is what your mind is obsessed with that pulls you, has a pull on you. It pulls you into the direction, so watch out for that. That's the trap.
But ultimately, that led you to, I guess maybe that experience became so intense that it led you to really look at it to the point where you realised it was the wrong move, so you could let it go.
Yes.
So
yes.
ultimately that experience led you to something good.
Yes.
Through its intensity.
Yes. Because my goal is not that. My goal is higher than that.
Yeah.
So since I have that higher goal, it pulls me, right? So I'm observant, and I'm looking, and I'm asking myself questions, and I'm continuously keeping my mind in a state of learning and observing, and looking, yeah. So in other words, maybe to just summarize that talk from today, the concept of spiritual materialism is, first of all, different in everyone's mind. Second of all, it may be skillful at some times, and it may be unskillful at others. Third of all, it may be skillful to some people and unskillful for others. There's a lot of variables, so nothing written in stone. In my opinion, what you do has to work. It has to be functional. And whether something works or not, you can only know because of your goal. And if something brings you closer to that goal, then it works. If something doesn't bring you closer to the goal, it doesn't. So yeah, that's all that comes to mind concerning that topic. I hope it was somewhat helpful. All right. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good week.